experiment in that our colleague Dariusz Leszczynski from Finland has sent us slides where there is audio with the slide, but I think you're going to have to, Andre, you will have to crank up the audio a fair amount to see if we can hear it. Are you ready, Andre? Yeah. Okay, let's give it a try. If his voice doesn't come through, I will be able to try to tell you what he's talking about. Let's see.
From Helsinki, Finland. I am Dariusz Leszczynski, currently research professor at the Finnish Radiation and Nuclear Safety Authority. I have been doing research on cell phone radiation and health for the last 15 years. When reviewing evidence on cell phone radiation and health, it is surprising how little we know and how many important health-related topics were not examined at all. There are many problems with the available scientific evidence. Epidemiological evidence has a problem of lack of reliable dosimetric information. It doesn't consider sufficiently cancer latency and studied cancer only. What about other ailments? Human volunteer studies have a problem of lack of biomarkers of response, and they are too much relying on the subjective observations of volunteers. Animal studies that are mostly negative, but negative results in animal studies do not mean no effect in humans. Finally, in vitro studies needed for discovering the mechanisms, but because of huge diversity in design, causes problems with interpretation of results. Evidence of biological effects induced by cell phone radiation is accumulating, but it remains contradictory. Effects on DNA, we don't know whether those effects are indirect damage of DNA or whether there is inhibition of repair of spontaneously occurring and radiation unrelated damage of DNA. There are effects on gene and protein expression observed in vitro, studying genes and proteins, and in human volunteers when looking at proteins, though genes were not studied yet. Cellular stress response as a candidate for the mechanism. It was observed in different cell models and with different exposures, and it might affect expression of genes involved in regulation of cancer. However, physiological and health impact, if any, of the above biological effects remains undetermined. Necessary to say that all those effects are non-thermal. Here is more about stress response. In 6 different studies listed here above, in spite of using different biological models and different exposure conditions, the authors consistently found effects on the same stress response proteins marked with arrows. To me, it means that it is a possible mechanism how cell phone radiation might induce biological effects. There are certain rules when to invoke precautionary principle. Here is a quote from the official document of the European Commission. It clearly indicates that cell phone radiation and health is the clear-cut case for invoking precautionary principle because scientific information is insufficient, inconclusive, and uncertain, and there are potentially dangerous effects of exposure. In conclusion, IARC classification of the cell phone radiation as a possible carcinogen is a sufficient reason for invoking precautionary principle. Current safety standards are insufficient because use of an off-the-shelf cell phone considered to be safe was shown to increase the risk of brain cancer. Users, especially children, should be encouraged to limit exposures. And finally, research should continue to find out how human body reacts to cell phone radiation, especially with prolonged exposures. Thank you.
Thank Dr. Leszczynski. And at this point, we will take a few questions because Dr. Bailey is not going to be able to be with us for the entire time.